Chosen one, stop. Whatever you were about to do, pause it. Whatever distraction was pulling at your attention, release it. Because this is one of those moments where the next few minutes could realign something that has been waiting years to click into place. I am not going to waste your time. I am not going to give you empty spiritual platitudes or dress up wishful thinking in holy language. What I am going to tell you is something that your own spirit has been trying to whisper to you for months, maybe years. But the noise of disappointment, the weight of loneliness, and the exhaustion of waiting have made it nearly impossible to hear. So let me say it clearly, directly, with no decoration. The person your soul recognizes as home is real. They exist, and they are not standing still. They are in motion right now, being guided by the same force that has been guiding you through every wilderness, every closed door, every heartbreak that felt like it would end you. You do not need to go find them. You do not need to download another app, lower your standards, or force yourself into spaces that drain your energy. You need to stay exactly where you are, because where you are is exactly where they are being led. And what I am about to walk you through will show you why the universe demanded that you wait, what was being built in the delay, and the signs that confirm everything is shifting right now. But I need you to feel something first. Before the understanding comes, I need you to locate the feeling. There is a tension that lives somewhere between your ribs and your throat. It is quiet. It is familiar. It has been there so long that you have almost stopped noticing it. But it activates every time you see two people holding hands. Every time someone at dinner says, "I do not know what I would do without them." Every time you scroll past another engagement photo and something inside you whispers, "Will it ever be my turn?" That tension is not random. It is not a flaw in your design. It is not evidence that something is broken inside you. It is recognition. Your spirit already knows what your mind has been afraid to believe. Someone is being drawn toward you right now, not by accident, not by luck, by a force that has been engineering this meeting since before you took your first breath. You were not meant to find this message today by coincidence. Something deeper than chance guided you here. Not because these words hold magic, but because your spirit needed to hear what it already knows, spoken out loud, confirmed by something outside your own tired, doubting mind. And I need you to understand the weight of what we are about to walk through together, because this is not a short encouragement. This is not a 5-minute reminder to keep your chin up. This is a complete revelation. A full map of what has been happening in your life, underneath the surface, behind the scenes, in the invisible realm where most people never think to look. We are going to walk through 3 territories together: where you have been, where you are right now, and where you are going. I am going to show you the hidden architecture behind every relationship that did not work. I am going to name the specific things that were being built inside you during the years you thought nothing was happening. I am going to reveal the signs that confirm your soulmate is not just a wish, but a living, breathing reality who is already in motion toward you. And I am going to give you practical tools, real tools, not vague affirmations, to carry you through the final stretch of this waiting season with your heart intact and your energy aligned. And then, at the very end, I am going to speak something over your life, a declaration, an activation, something that I believe carries weight far beyond the words themselves, something your spirit has been waiting to receive, spoken into the sacred space between where you are and where you are going. But none of that will land the way it is meant to unless we start at the beginning. And the beginning is not pretty. The beginning is the part you have been carrying alone, the part most people skim past because it is too painful to sit with. I am not going to skim past it, because the pain is not just backstory, it is the blueprint. And there are things buried in those old heartbreaks that will explain everything once you see the pattern. So stay with me through all of this. Do not leave halfway through thinking you have heard enough, because the piece that changes everything, The peace that makes the entire journey make sense does not arrive until the final stretch. And if you leave early, you will carry the questions without ever receiving the answers. Let me take you back, not to a date, not to a specific person, but to a feeling. The first time you gave your heart to someone completely, not cautiously, not halfway, not with one foot near the exit. I mean the first time you opened the door all the way. The first time you looked at another human being and thought, this is it, this is the one, this is where the aching finally stops. You remember it, even if you have tried to forget, even if years have piled on top of that memory like earth over a buried seed. It is still there, still vivid, still tender when you touch it. You gave everything, your attention, your energy, your time, your patience. The kind of love that most people talk about wanting but very few people know how to receive. You showed up with your whole self. Not the edited version, not the carefully curated version, but the real, vulnerable, unguarded version that believed if you just loved hard enough, it would be enough. And for a while, it seemed like it was going to work. Maybe for a few weeks, maybe a few months, maybe even years. Something in that connection felt like the answer to every prayer you had ever whispered into the dark. And your shoulders dropped for the first time in as long as you could remember, because you thought the waiting was finally over. And then it ended. Maybe it ended with a conversation you did not see coming. Maybe it ended with a silence that stretched so long it became its own kind of language. Maybe it ended with a betrayal so sharp it rearranged the furniture of your trust so completely that you still have not figured out where everything belongs. But however it ended, what it left behind was not just sadness, it was confusion. Because you did not love wrong, you loved correctly. You loved with depth and sincerity, and a kind of openness that most people spend their entire lives never reaching. And it still was not enough. That particular kind of heartbreak, the kind where you know you did everything right, and it still fell apart. That is the wound that has been running underneath everything since. And here is what nobody told you in that moment. Here is what no friend, no family member, no well-meaning voice explained to you while you were picking up the pieces. It did not end because something was wrong with you. It ended because something was right with you. What you carried, your depth, your sensitivity, your capacity for real intimacy, was simply too much for what they were built to hold. You were not rejected, you were mismatched. And the universe, in its painful but precise wisdom, removed a connection that would have kept you locked at a frequency far below where you were designed to live. But you did not know that then. You could not have known. So you did what anyone would do. You healed, you grew, you cautiously opened the door again, and you tried one more time. The second time was different. You were smarter, more careful. You watched for the red flags you missed the first time around. You entered the connection with your eyes wider open, your guard a little higher, your heart wrapped in a thin layer of protection that you hoped would be enough without being too much. And for a while, it seemed like you had learned the lesson. The person felt safe, the dynamic felt balanced. You thought this time, it would hold. But the same wound showed up wearing a different face. Maybe this time it was emotional unavailability instead of betrayal. Maybe it was slow withdrawal instead of sudden disappearance. The specifics changed. The surface details rearranged themselves. But the core experience was identical. You gave yourself fully. They could not hold what you offered. And once again you were left standing in the wreckage of something that looked like it was going to be beautiful, asking yourself the same devastating question. What am I doing wrong? The third connection, the fourth, maybe the fifth. Each one a variation on the same theme, and with each one, the hope that arrived at the beginning got a little quieter, and the wall that rose at the end got a little higher. Until eventually, you stopped calling it hope altogether and started calling it caution. started calling it wisdom, started calling it, I am just focused on myself right now. But underneath that language, underneath the rebranding of heartbreak as self-improvement, the ache was still there, waiting, pulsing, reminding you every time the house went quiet that the door you closed was not locked from the outside, it was locked from within. I need to be very honest with you about something right now. This pattern, the one we just traced, the one you have been living inside for years, is not random. It is not bad luck. It is not evidence that you are broken or cursed or destined to spend your life watching other people find what you cannot. This is the specific energetic reality of carrying high-frequency light in a world where most people operate at much lower frequencies. Let me explain what I mean, because this is the piece that reframes everything. There is something in psychology called the attachment spectrum. On one end, you have people who attach securely, who can give and receive love with relative ease. On the other end, you have people who avoid attachment, who want closeness but instinctively pull away the moment things get real. And in the middle, you have people who attach anxiously, who chase connection with an intensity that comes from a wound, not from wholeness. Here is the pattern that nobody explains to empaths, to highly sensitive people, to chosen ones who carry a frequency most people can feel but cannot name. Your openness feels like safety to avoidant people. Your depth feels like medicine to emotionally wounded people. Your light feels like warmth to people who are cold inside. So they come to you, they orbit you, they say things like, I have never felt this way before and you are different from anyone I have ever met, and they mean it. In that moment they absolutely mean it. But what they are responding to is not who you are as a partner. They are responding to your frequency, your energy, and they are mistaking the comfort of your presence for the readiness to share your life. So they stay for a while, they take what they need, and then, when the real work of intimacy begins, when it demands vulnerability and consistency and actual reciprocity, they leave. Because they were never equipped for the depth you were offering. They were just cold, and you were warm, and for a little while, that felt like love. You did not choose wrong. You were chosen by the wrong. And there is a profound difference between those two realities. One says the problem is your judgment. The other says the problem is your accessibility. One puts the blame on your decisions. The other puts the explanation in your frequency. And when you understand that distinction, when you really let it settle, something inside you unclenches for the first time in years. Because you were never the problem. Your light was the problem. Not because light is wrong, but because light without a filter attracts everything, including things that were never meant to stay. And I need to pause here and ask you something directly. Which one of them are you thinking about right now? Which face just appeared behind your eyes? Which voice just echoed in a corner of your memory that you thought you had sealed off? Do not push it away. Let it rise. Not to reopen the wound, but to honor it. Because that person, that specific connection, that particular flavor of heartbreak, it was not meaningless. It was not random. And before this message is over, you will understand exactly why it had to happen, what it was specifically removing from your life, and how it was clearing the path for what is actually meant for you. There is something happening in your love story right now that I have not revealed yet. Something underneath the pattern, something below the surface of all these connections that will reframe everything you have been through, from loss to architecture, from tragedy to design. But I need to name something else first, something quieter, something that does not live in the dramatic heartbreaks but in the spaces between them. I am talking about the ordinary loneliness, the kind that does not announce itself with tears or grand moments. The kind that shows up when you are in the passenger seat of your own car and the driver's seat is empty and you catch yourself glancing over at a space where someone should be. The kind that hums underneath dinner for one. Underneath holidays where you smile a little too hard. Underneath the specific silence of a home that holds only one heartbeat. You have carried this for years, maybe decades. and you have carried it with a grace that most people will never fully appreciate, because you made it look easy. You filled the empty space with purpose, with spiritual growth, with service, with building something meaningful in the world. And all of that is real, all of that is beautiful. None of it was a lie, but it was never the whole story. The whole story includes the ache. The whole story includes the nights you held your own hand because no one else was there to hold it. The whole story includes the prayers you whispered into the dark, not the eloquent ones, not the ones you would share in a group, but the raw, unfiltered, 3-word prayers that came from the bottom of your exhaustion. Please, I am tired. I see all of it, every layer, every room you stopped entering, every hope you locked away because visiting it hurt more than ignoring it. And I honor what you have carried. Because refusing to settle for what almost fits, choosing to wait instead of choosing wrong, that is not weakness. That is one of the bravest things a human being can do. Now let me show you what has been happening underneath all that pain. Because this is where the story begins to shift. This is where the narrative turns from something that has been happening to you into something that has been happening for you. You have been caught in what can only be described as a karmic cycle. And I use that word carefully, not as decoration, but as the most accurate description of a pattern that shows up across sacred texts, across psychological research, across every wisdom tradition that has ever tried to explain why deeply loving people end up in deeply painful relationships. A karmic cycle is not a punishment. Let me say that one more time, because it needs to land somewhere different than your head. It needs to land in your bones. A karmic cycle is not a punishment. It is a curriculum. It is the way the universe presents the same lesson in different packaging until the lesson is absorbed so completely that the pattern is no longer necessary. Think of it like a classroom. You do not fail a class and get punished. You fail a class and get enrolled again. Not as cruelty, as opportunity. And every relationship you have walked through was a class. Each one had a specific syllabus. Each one had a specific lesson embedded in the experience. And the reason the same type of heartbreak kept repeating was not that you were stuck. It was that the lesson had not yet been fully absorbed. But here is what changes everything. And this is the part that most people miss because they are so focused on the pain that they cannot see the pattern behind it. Each of those lessons was not just teaching you something. It was removing something specific. Something that, if left in place, would have sabotaged the sacred connection that was always meant to be yours. Every heartbreak was a surgical removal. Every loss was a targeted clearing. And every person who walked out of your life took with them a piece of the old operating system that had to go before the upgrade could be installed. I am going to show you exactly what was removed, piece by piece, relationship by relationship, in the next part of this message. And when you see it laid out, you will understand for the first time that your love story was never a series of random failures. It was an architect's blueprint. Every demolition was deliberate. Every removal was precise. And what remains, who you are right now in this exact moment, is exactly what needed to remain for what is coming next. But there is something else I need to show you first. Something that connects the karmic cycle to the person who is approaching you right now, because they have been going through their own cycle, their own clearing, their own painful, invisible preparation. And when I reveal what that parallel journey looks like, you will understand why the timing had to be this precise. Stay right where you are. Every person who ever broke your heart left something behind. Not a scar, though those are real too. Something more specific than a scar. They left an imprint. A pattern of belief, a pattern of behavior, a way of seeing yourself that was installed by that experience and has been running quietly in the background of your life ever since. And the reason I need you to see those imprints now is not so you can relive the pain. It is so you can finally see what was being dismantled. Because each of those relationships was not just a lesson in the karmic classroom. It was a demolition project. Something specific needed to be torn down inside you before the foundation for sacred love could be poured. And those people, as painful as they were the demolition crew. Let me show you what I mean. Think about the one who was emotionally unavailable, the person who gave you just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to let you rest. The one who ran hot and cold, present one moment and distant the next, until you were so confused by the inconsistency that you started believing the crumbs were the full meal. You started adjusting your expectations downward, convincing yourself that maybe this is just what love looks like. Maybe asking for more makes you needy. Maybe this is enough. That relationship did something very precise inside you. It exposed a belief you did not even know you were carrying. The belief that you had to earn love. That love was something you worked for, performed for, proved yourself worthy of receiving. And here is the thing. That belief did not start in that relationship. It was installed much earlier. In childhood, in family dynamics, in the unspoken rules of an environment that taught you, without ever saying the words, that connection was conditional, that you had to be useful to be loved, that you had to produce value to deserve presence. The emotionally unavailable partner did not create that wound. They revealed it. And by forcing you to live inside that belief until you could no longer tolerate it, they initiated the first demolition. You walked out of that relationship knowing, even if you could not put it into words yet, that you would never again accept love that required you to beg for it. That is not heartbreak. That is surgery. Now, think about the one who was controlling, the one who needed to manage everything, your time, your friendships, your decisions, your self-expression, the one who disguised possession as devotion and control as concern, the one who made you smaller, piece by piece, so gradually you almost did not notice until one day you looked in the mirror and could barely recognize who you had become inside that relationship. That person demolished something different. They dismantled your tolerance for shrinking. Before that experience, you did not fully understand the difference between compromise and self-abandonment. You thought that love meant accommodation, bending, adjusting, reshaping yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. And you were good at it. So good that you did not notice how much of yourself you were leaving on the floor. But that relationship pushed it too far. It bent you past the point of flexibility, and something inside you cracked, not broke, cracked. And through that crack, light got in. The light of self-recognition. The sudden disorienting realization that the person you had been pretending to be inside that relationship was not you, had never been you, and could never be you again. You walked out of that one knowing something deep in your bones that your mind has been catching up to ever since. You will never shrink again. Not for anyone, not for any reason, not at any price. And then there was the one that almost worked. This is the hardest one to talk about, because there was no villain in this story, no obvious betrayal, no abuse to point to, no clear moment where everything collapsed. The connection was real. The care was genuine. The compatibility was close enough to almost work, close enough to make you think, maybe this is what love is supposed to look like. Close enough to keep you in it for months or years, past the point where something deep inside you was whispering that it was not quite right. This relationship did the most delicate demolition of all. It demolished your willingness to settle for almost. Before this connection, you might have accepted 80%. You might have talked yourself into believing that the missing 20% was a reasonable sacrifice, that nobody gets everything, that asking for full alignment was unrealistic, that you were being too picky, too idealistic, too much. But something in you, something fierce and ancient and completely non-negotiable, would not let you stay in almost, even though it made no logical sense to leave something that was mostly good. Even though everyone around you was confused by your decision, even though a part of you was confused by your own decision. You left, or it left you. Either way, the departure demolished the pattern that says, good enough is enough. And from that moment forward, something in your spirit would only accept what was fully, completely, unmistakably right. Not perfect, not flawless, but right. The way a key fits a lock, the way a note completes a chord, the way your own name sounds when someone who truly loves you says it out loud. Now there is one more I need to name. And this one is different from the others because it did not just demolish a pattern, it rearranged the entire architecture of your ability to trust. I am talking about the betrayal. Not the garden variety disappointment, not the slow fade of a connection that simply ran out of fuel. I am talking about the deliberate, conscious, chosen violation of the trust you placed in another person's hands. The kind of betrayal that does not just end a relationship. It ends a version of you. The naive version, the trusting version, the one who believed that people mean what they say and follow through on what they promise. I am not going to pretend this one was easy to heal from. It was not. And I am not going to pretend the scar it left is invisible. It is not. What I need to tell you is something that took a long time to understand, and I need you to sit with it before you react to it. The betrayal was the most important demolition of all, because it removed the one thing that would have made you vulnerable to counterfeit love for the rest of your life. Naive trust. Let me explain the difference between naive trust and sacred discernment, because this distinction might be the most important thing you hear today. Naive trust says, I believe you because I want to believe you. It is trust built on hope, not evidence. It is the default setting of a good heart that has not yet learned that not everyone operates with the same integrity. Sacred discernment says, I believe you because your actions have consistently matched your words over time. It is trust built on pattern recognition. It is the upgraded operating system of a good heart that has been through enough to know the difference between someone who declares trustworthiness and someone who demonstrates it. Before the betrayal, you operated on naive trust, and that meant you were accessible to anyone who said the right words, regardless of whether those words were supported by consistent action. Your heart was wide open, and that openness was beautiful, but it was also unprotected in ways you could not afford to stay. The betrayal, as devastating as it was, installed a filter, not a wall. A filter. A wall blocks everything. A filter lets genuine connection pass through while catching everything that carries deception. And that filter is one of the most essential preparations for the love that is approaching you right now. Because here is the truth that makes sense of everything. Sometimes the betrayal is the mechanism for the relocation. There is a figure from sacred history whose story illustrates this so clearly, it almost feels like it was written about you. His name was Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers. The people who were supposed to protect him, the people who shared his blood, looked at him and decided he was worth more as a transaction than as a family member. Carried to a foreign land against his will, imprisoned for a crime he did not commit, forgotten by the very people he helped while he was locked away. If you stopped Joseph's story at any single chapter, it would look like unrelenting tragedy. It would read like the biography of a man who was cursed by the very people and forces that should have been his greatest allies. But the story does not stop there. Because every betrayal, every imprisonment, every forgotten promise was doing something Joseph could not see from inside the pain. The brothers' betrayal put him in Egypt. The imprisonment gave him access to people in positions of influence. The waiting built skills and character that no comfortable life could have produced. And every single piece of that painful puzzle was moving him, step by step, toward a position he could never have reached through normal channels. 13 years. That is how long Joseph waited between the promise and the fulfillment. 13 years of betrayal, false accusation, abandonment, and silence from the very source he trusted. And then, one morning, one single, unremarkable, ordinary morning. The waiting ended. Not gradually, not in careful stages, suddenly, completely. In the space of a single day, he went from a forgotten prisoner to the second most powerful person in the most powerful nation on earth. I am not telling you this to give you a history lesson. I am telling you this because the architecture of your love story follows the same blueprint. The people who hurt you were not acting as agents of your destruction. They were, whether they knew it or not, whether they intended it or not, acting as agents of your relocation. Every person who left your life was removing a connection that would have kept you positioned at coordinates where your soulmate could never reach you. Every heartbreak was a course correction. Every rejection was a redirection. What felt like them walking away from you was actually you being moved towards something they could not follow you into. Not because the universe is cruel, but because what is being prepared for you requires a version of you that could only be forged through exactly what you have been through. The naively trusting version of you would have been deceived by a counterfeit connection and never known the difference. The shrinking version of you would have disappeared inside someone else's life and lost the very light that your soulmate is being drawn to. The settling version of you would have filled the space that was being held for the right person with someone who was merely convenient. Every single demolition was targeted. Every single removal was precise. And what remains, who you are right now, is the version that is ready for what is coming. And it is not just you. Right now, at this very moment, in cities and small towns all across the world, in different time zones and different seasons of life, there are chosen ones, just like you, going through the same process. Lying in the same dark, carrying the same ache, asking the same question you have been asking. Why me? Why this long? Is there something fundamentally wrong with me? And the answer, for every single one of them, is the same answer I am giving you right now. Nothing is wrong with you. Something is happening through you. The waiting is not a glitch in the system. It is the system, and it is working. Now, before I go deeper, I need to address something that lives in the quietest part of this whole experience. Something you may not have fully acknowledged even to yourself. There was a night, a specific night. Maybe you know exactly which one I am talking about the moment I say it. The night you decided, not dramatically, not with tears or grand announcements, but quietly, in the privacy of your own exhaustion, that you were done. Maybe it was after the last relationship crumbled. Maybe it was after the 100th prayer that seemed to dissolve into the ceiling without ever being received. Maybe it was a random Tuesday when nothing particular happened. But the accumulated weight of all the waiting and all the disappointment and all the watching everyone else find what you could not settled onto your chest, like a stone that had finally found its resting place. And in that moment, you made a quiet decision. You did not say it out loud, you did not post it anywhere, but somewhere inside you, a door closed. The door to the room where you kept your hope for love. And you walked away from it with a calm that surprised you, because it did not feel like peace, it felt like surrender. The final kind. I will be fine alone. And you meant it, not as a brave affirmation, as a survival strategy. I want to honor that moment, because what you did that night was not weakness. It was not giving up in the way the world defines giving up. It was the last, most desperate act of self-preservation by a heart that had been stretched beyond what any heart should be asked to endure. And I will tell you something about that night that you could not have known while you were living through it. The moment you released the grip, the white knuckle, desperate, please let this be my year grip on love, arriving on your timeline, in your way, according to your expectations. Something shifted in the unseen realm. Not something small, something tectonic. Because the universe does not respond to desperation. Desperation broadcasts a frequency of lack. It transmits, I do not have, and the universe mirrors that signal back. But release, genuine release, the kind that does not come from positive thinking but from the very bottom of exhaustion. Release broadcasts something entirely different. It transmits, I am ready to receive what is meant for me, in the timing that is meant for me, in the way that is meant for me. You did not know you were doing that. You thought you were closing a door. But what you actually did was remove the last barrier between you and the love that was already in motion. I know that sounds paradoxical. I know it sounds like I am saying that giving up was the breakthrough, and in a way, I am. But not giving up on love. Giving up on controlling it. Giving up on managing the timeline. Giving up on the idea that you could think your way or force your way into making the right person appear at the right moment. What you surrendered was not hope. What you surrendered was the grip. And sometimes the grip is the only thing standing between you and what has been trying to reach you. Joseph did not talk his way out of prison. Ruth did not strategize her way to the field where everything changed. The seed does not push itself up through the soil by force. There is a point in every divine process where the human effort completes its assignment and the sacred orchestration takes over. And that point almost always looks like giving up. But it is not giving up. It is stepping back so that something larger can step forward. And speaking of Ruth, there is a reason her story keeps surfacing in my spirit as I share this with you. Ruth lost everything. Her husband died. Her security vanished. In a culture where a woman's entire future depended on her marriage, the death of her husband was not just grief. It was the deletion of her trajectory. Every plan she had made, every future she had imagined, every sense of stability she had built, gone in a single loss. She had every reason to turn around, to go back to what was familiar, to find safety in the known, even if the known was small and limited and offered nothing close to what her heart was designed for. Her mother-in-law even told her to go, told her to return to her homeland, find a new husband, start over in a place that at least offered the comfort of the predictable. But Ruth refused. Not because she had a map. She did not. Not because someone promised her a reward. Nobody did. She refused because something in her spirit recognized that the path itself was the destination. That staying loyal to the journey, even when the journey made absolutely no sense, was the only move that honored what she carried inside. And that path, that long, exhausting, unpromising path, led her to a field. And in that field stood a man named Boaz, who had not gone looking for her. She had not gone looking for him. The path brought them to the same coordinates, and when they met, everything Ruth had lost was not just replaced. It was multiplied beyond anything she could have imagined in her deepest grief. Ruth did not chase love. She did not lower her standards or settle for what was available. She stayed loyal to the journey. And the journey delivered what no amount of searching could have found. And here is where this connects directly to you, because you are living inside Ruth's story right now, not at the beginning, where everything fell apart, and not at the end, where everything came together. You are in the middle. You are on the path. The long, uncertain, why am I still walking path. And here is what Ruth could not see while she was walking it. Boaz was already in the field, before she arrived. Before she knew his name or his face or anything about him, he was already there, already positioned, already in the place where their paths would cross, waiting without knowing he was waiting for anything at all. Your soulmate is already in the field. They do not know your name yet. They may not know your face, but something in their spirit is oriented toward the same coordinates where your path is leading. And every step you take, even the ones that feel directionless, even the ones that seem to lead nowhere, is bringing you closer to the exact same patch of ground. The karmic cycle has run its course. The demolition is complete. The relationships that needed to clear old patterns have done their work. The naive trust has been upgraded to sacred discernment. The tolerance for crumbs has been demolished. The willingness to shrink has been destroyed. The settling has been replaced by a non-negotiable standard that will not bend. And what remains? You. The real you. The version that was always there underneath the adaptations and the survival strategies and the costumes you wore to make yourself fit in spaces that were never designed for the fullness of what you carry. This is who your soulmate is walking toward. Not the performing version, not the people-pleasing version, not the version that bends and shrinks and accepts less than what they deserve. This version, forged in fire, refined by waiting, stripped of everything false until the only thing left is what is true. And what is true, chosen one, is more than enough. It is exactly what was needed. Now, I told you at the beginning of this message that every relationship that did not work was a filter, and I have shown you what was being filtered. But there is something else happening that I have not yet revealed, because the filtering was only half the process. While the old patterns were being removed, something else was being built, something invisible, something underground, something that, when I show it to you, will finally make sense of every silent year, every empty night, every season where it felt like nothing was happening. The wilderness was not empty, it never was, and what was being constructed inside it is the most important part of your entire story. That is what I am going to take you into next. Take a breath with me, a real one, not the shallow, polite kind you use to keep moving through the day. A deep one. Let your shoulders drop. Let the weight of everything we just walked through settle, not sit heavy on your chest, but settle, like sediment in a river after the current finally slows. Because what I am about to show you is the other side of the pain. Not the denial of it, not the spiritual bypass of it. The actual, concrete, verifiable other side. The things that were being built inside you during the years you thought nothing was happening. There is something I want you to picture. A seed buried in soil. From above the surface, nothing is visible. Just dirt, just stillness, just silence. And if all you could see was the surface, you would assume nothing was happening. You might even assume the seed was dead, that it had been planted wrong, that the soil was bad, that the whole thing was a waste of time. But underneath the surface, hidden from every eye, the most important work is taking place. Roots are pushing downward through the dark. The shell is cracking open. Energy that was stored and compressed is converting into growth. The entire architecture of what will one day become a towering tree, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the fruit, all of it is being designed and initiated in the darkness, in the silence, in the place where no one is watching and no applause is coming. That is your relationship wilderness. That is what the past several years have actually been. Not nothing, not stagnation, not punishment, construction. And the fact that you could not see it does not mean it was not happening. It means the growth was underground. And underground growth is the only kind that produces roots deep enough to sustain what is coming. Let me name 3 things that the wilderness was specifically building inside you. Not abstract concepts, not spiritual decoration. 3 concrete capacities that are required, not optional, not recommended, required for the kind of love that is being prepared for you. The first capacity is emotional depth that cannot be manufactured. Everyone talks about wanting deep connection. Dating profiles are full of words like authentic and real and vulnerable, but most people use those words without understanding what they actually cost. Because genuine emotional depth, the kind that allows 2 people to truly see each other and hold each other through the full complexity of a shared life, is not something you pick up from a book. It is not something you develop in a weekend workshop or absorb from a podcast. It is forged in loss. Every relationship that ended badly gave you something the relationship itself never could. The ability to sit with pain without running from it. The ability to hold space for someone else's darkness because you have spent enough time sitting with your own. The ability to stay present in the uncomfortable, messy, unresolved moments that every real, lasting relationship will eventually produce. If love had come easily, if your first relationship had worked, you would have the emotional depth of someone who has never had to dig. And there is nothing wrong with a life like that. But it is not the depth your soulmate needs, because your soulmate has been walking through their own fire. They carry their own wounds, their own complexity, their own history of staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m, and they need a partner who can meet them in that depth without flinching, without trying to fix it, without needing it to be cleaned up before they can be present with it. You can meet them now. 2 years ago you could not have. 5 years ago, certainly not. The depth was not there yet. The wilderness built it. The second capacity is self-knowledge that cannot be rushed. Before the hard seasons, you did not fully know yourself. And I say that with no disrespect to the person you were before, because that version of you was beautiful, sincere, doing their absolute best with what they had, but they were operating with blind spots, patterns they could not see, attachment styles they did not understand, boundaries they did not know they needed, needs they had not yet learned to name out loud. Every failed relationship was a mirror, not a flattering mirror, a true one, the kind that shows you not just what you want to see, but what you need to see. And each time you looked into that mirror, you learned something new about yourself. You learned what triggers you and why. You learned where your boundaries actually are and what happens inside you when they get crossed. You learned the difference between what you are attracted to and what is actually good for you, and you discovered those are not always the same thing. You learned the difference between what you want and what you need, and you realized that what you need is non-negotiable, even when what you want is screaming louder. This self-knowledge, this detailed, hard-won, experiential map of your own inner landscape is the single most important foundation for lasting love, because you cannot choose the right person if you do not know yourself. You cannot communicate your needs if you have not identified them. You cannot hold a healthy relationship together if you are blind to the patterns that quietly sabotage connection from the inside. The wilderness gave you a master class in yourself, and the tuition was paid in heartbreak, but the education is priceless, and it is yours to keep. The third capacity is the hardest to talk about, but it might be the most important of all. It is the capacity for sacred intimacy, and it only develops through solitude. There is a paradox in love that very few people understand. The people who are most capable of profound intimacy are not the ones who have always been in relationships. They are the ones who have spent significant, sustained time genuinely alone, not lonely alone, not filling the silence with distractions alone, but truly, radically, uncomfortably alone with themselves. Because sacred intimacy, the kind that holds two people together not through passion or convenience, but through mutual witnessing over years, requires something that only solitude can build: a solid, settled, tested relationship with yourself. If you do not know how to sit with your own thoughts without reaching for a distraction, you will not know how to sit with another person's silence. If you have not made peace with your own shadows, you will project them onto your partner and punish them for wounds they did not create. If you have never been truly comfortable in your own presence, you will always need someone else there to feel complete. And that is not love. That is dependency, wearing love's clothing. Your years of solitude built the internal architecture that sacred love will rest on. The ability to be alone without being lonely. The ability to enjoy your own company without performing it for anyone. The ability to walk into a relationship not because you need someone to complete you, but because you want someone to share what is already full. That is a fundamentally different foundation, and it could not have been built without the wilderness. Now, I want to go deeper into something that most people completely miss when they are trying to make sense of a love story that feels like a series of losses. It is not just about what was removed, it is about who had to die. And I mean that in the deepest, most necessary sense of the word. Not physical death, identity death. The death of the false self that was built to survive environments that sacred love was never going to survive in. Over the course of your relational history, you developed a set of adaptations. These were not conscious choices. They were survival strategies, automatic behaviors that your mind built in response to the specific wounds you experienced. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, you developed the adaptation of performance. You learned, without anyone ever teaching it to you directly, that being loved required being useful, being impressive, being productive. You became the person who earns affection by doing, and somewhere along the way you forgot that you could be loved simply for being. If you were abandoned or betrayed early on, you developed the adaptation of hypervigilance. You became the person who reads every room before entering it, who scans every silence for hidden meaning, who keeps one emotional bag packed at all times in case you need to leave before you get left. If you experienced emotional neglect, you developed the adaptation of radical self-sufficiency. You became the person who handles everything alone, who asks for nothing, who wears independence like armor because the one time you asked for help, nobody came. These adaptations served you. I want to be very clear about that. They were not weaknesses. They were intelligent, creative, courageous responses to environments that were not safe enough for your real self to exist in. They kept you alive. They kept you functional. They got you through situations that might have destroyed someone without those defenses. But they are not you. They are costumes, and the wilderness has been systematically stripping them off. The performer had to die so the truth teller could be born. The person who abandoned themselves to keep someone else comfortable had to dissolve so the person with real boundaries could take their place. The one who confused intensity with intimacy had to be released so the one who recognizes genuine peace could emerge. The person who settled just to avoid being alone had to be retired, so the person who would rather stand alone than stand diminished could finally straighten their spine. This process is not gentle. If you have been through it, you know. There are moments in the middle of identity stripping where you genuinely do not know who you are anymore. The old strategies stop working, but the new ones have not been installed yet. You feel suspended between two versions of yourself, too evolved for the old life, not yet equipped for the new one. That is the cocoon. That is the space between the caterpillar and the butterfly, where the organism literally dissolves into liquid before it reconstitutes into something that can fly. You have been in the cocoon, and I know it has felt like dissolving. I know there have been moments where you could not tell if you were coming apart or coming together. I know that losing the familiar version of yourself, even a wounded version, even a limited version, can feel more disorienting than any external loss, because when the external world shifts, you still know who you are. But when the self shifts, even the ground under your feet becomes uncertain. The dissolving was necessary. The confusion was necessary. The loss of the old identity was necessary. Because the person your soulmate needs, the person whose frequency matches theirs, the person who can hold the weight and beauty of a sacred connection without crumbling, that person is not the caterpillar. That person is what the caterpillar becomes. Let me tell you about a man who went through exactly this. He spent 14 years moving through relationships that followed the pattern we have been describing. One after another, each one a different face over the same wound. And after the last one ended, the one he was absolutely certain was finally right, he entered a season of solitude that lasted 3 years. During those 3 years, he said he did not recognize himself. The confidence he used to carry like a second skin was gone. The ease with which he once navigated social situations had evaporated. He described it as feeling like a house that had been gutted. The walls were still standing, but everything inside, the furniture, the fixtures, the wiring, the plumbing, had been ripped out. He was structurally intact, but functionally empty. And then, so slowly, he almost missed it, new things started being installed. Not the old things repaired. New things. A different kind of confidence. quieter, less performative, rooted in self-knowledge instead of external approval. A different kind of openness, not naive, not guarded, but discerning. A new relationship with being alone, not the desperate avoidance of it, but actual genuine enjoyment of his own presence. When he finally met his person, he told me something I will never forget. He said that the woman he ended up with would never have been attracted to the old version of him, and he would never have recognized her as his partner if he had still been wearing the old costume. The stripping and the rebuilding were not obstacles to love, they were the prerequisites for it. This is what has been happening inside you, not stagnation, not punishment, not the universe forgetting your address. Construction, targeted, precise, invisible construction that corresponds to something very specific. And this is the part that takes my breath away every time I think about it. The construction is not random. Every capacity being built inside you corresponds to a specific need in the person who is coming toward you. Every rough edge being smoothed in your character corresponds to a rough edge in theirs that needs softness. Every strength being forged in your solitude corresponds to a place in their story that needs exactly what you carry. You are not just becoming a better version of yourself in some general self-improvement way. You are becoming the specific version that matches the specific person who is approaching. The universe is not assembling a generic partner. It is building you uniquely, precisely, intentionally for someone who needs exactly what the wilderness has produced in you, and who carries exactly what the wilderness has taught you to need. Joseph understood this, even if he could not have said it while he was living through it. During those years in prison, he learned to interpret dreams. He had no idea that dream interpretation would be the exact skill a desperate king would need. He learned organizational management inside a cell block. He had no idea that those skills would soon be required to run the economy of the largest civilization on Earth. He practiced leading without title, without recognition, without applause. And that specific quality, proven leadership forged in invisible circumstances, was exactly what the position required. If Joseph had been given a choice, he would have chosen a shorter, less painful road. Anyone would. But the shorter road would not have built the precise combination of skills, character, and readiness that the role demanded. The pain was not a detour from the preparation. The pain was the preparation. I want to ground this in something practical now, because spiritual frameworks are powerful, but they land differently when they are connected to something you can see in your own life. Think about who you were before the wilderness, before the heartbreaks, before the long waiting season began, and then look at who you are now. Before, you tolerated crumbs. Now you refuse to accept anything less than what feeds your soul. Before, you disappeared inside relationships. Now you know exactly who you are outside of one. Before, you confused explosive chemistry with real compatibility. Now you understand that the strongest connections are the ones that feel steady, not dramatic. Before, you avoided being alone. You filled every silence with noise, every weekend with plans, every gap with distraction. Now you can sit in your own company and actually find something there worth sitting with. Before, you needed someone else to tell you that you mattered in order to feel like you did. Now you carry a relationship with your own worth that does not rise or fall based on whether someone else confirms it. Look at that. Really look at it. That is not regression. That is not stagnation. That is not the biography of someone stuck in the same place they were 5 years ago. That is evolution. Quiet, invisible, underground evolution that has been happening every single day of this waiting season, whether you recognized it or not. You are not who you were when the waiting began, and the person you have become, this specific, refined, forged in fire version of you, is precisely the person your soulmate requires. And here is what I have not told you yet. While all of this building was happening inside you, it was happening inside someone else too. Your soulmate was going through their own wilderness, their own demolition, their own identity stripping, their own painful reconstruction in the dark. And what was being built in them corresponds to what was being built in you, like two halves of a bridge being constructed from opposite sides of a river, designed to meet perfectly in the middle when the time is right. I am going to show you what that parallel journey looks like later in this message, and when I do, it will change the way you understand divine timing forever. But first, there is something else I need to show you, because the building is not just historical. It is not something that happened and is now complete. It is happening right now, in this exact season, in this specific window of your life. And the present moment is speaking to you. It is showing you signs, giving you evidence, whispering things that, if you learn to hear them, will change the way you carry these final weeks and months of waiting. And before this message reaches its end, I am going to speak something over your life, a declaration, an activation that I believe carries weight far beyond the words themselves. Something your spirit has been waiting to receive, and I believe it will stay with you long after you leave this space. So stay with me through everything that is coming. But right now, I need to bring you out of the past and into the present. Because as important as understanding where you have been is, what matters most right now is understanding where you are standing. Because the threshold you are on is not empty space between two chapters. It is alive, it is active, and it is showing you things that most people miss entirely. Right now, in this moment, you are standing in a doorway. Behind you is everything we just walked through. The heartbreaks, the clearing, the demolition, the rebuilding. It is not gone. You carry it in your bones, in your wisdom, in the quiet strength that radiates from you in ways you do not always notice. But that chapter is behind you. The active construction phase is reaching its completion. And in front of you is something you have not been able to see clearly yet. Not because it is not there, but because you have been looking backward for so long, making sense of the pain, processing the losses, trying to understand the patterns, that you have not fully turned around to face what is forming in the space ahead of you. I need you to turn around now, because the present, this exact moment, this exact season, this exact day, is not just a bridge between the past and the future. It is its own territory. And it is showing you things that, if you learn to read them, will change the way you carry every remaining day of this waiting. Let me describe something and see if it lands. There is a strange feeling in you lately. It arrived without announcement. It does not fit neatly into any emotional category you are used to working with. On one hand, there is a peace. Not the performed peace you have been practicing for other people. Not the "I am trusting the process" piece that you recite because you feel like you are supposed to. An actual, bone-level, unexplainable peace. A quiet settling, as if something inside you has stopped searching. As if the engine that was running all this time, the one that powered the anxiety and the urgency and the what if it never happens loop, has finally turned off. But at the same time, right alongside that peace, sometimes in the exact same breath, there is a restlessness. Not the old kind. Not the desperate, anxious, I need to make something happen restlessness. Something different. Something that feels more like anticipation. Like the feeling in your chest the night before a long trip. Like your spirit knows something your mind has not caught up to yet. Peace and restlessness simultaneously, as if two frequencies are playing at once, and instead of creating static, the overlap is producing something you have never felt before. If that describes where you are right now, even partially, then what I am about to tell you is this. That duality is the signature of the threshold. It is the exact internal experience that occurs when the waiting season is transitioning into the receiving season. The peace is your spirit confirming that the inner work is done. The restlessness is your spirit sensing what is approaching. You are not confused. You are calibrating, and there are specific shifts happening inside you right now that confirm this. not things you have been trying to change. Things that have been changing on their own, as if some deeper intelligence is rearranging the furniture of your inner world without asking your permission first. The first shift: your tolerance for what you used to accept has collapsed. Things that were merely annoying 6 months ago are now intolerable. Conversations that used to feel fine now feel hollow. People whose energy you once accommodated without thinking now exhaust you within minutes, and you have been wondering if something is wrong with you. If you are becoming too picky, too sensitive, too demanding, nothing is wrong with you. Your frequency has changed, and what used to match it no longer does, the same way a lock changes when you rekey it. The old keys stop working, not because the lock is broken, because the lock has been upgraded, and only one key is calibrated for the new setting. The second shift: your relationship with solitude has quietly transformed. It happened so gradually you might not have noticed the moment it turned. But if you look back over the past year, you will see it. The desperation that once accompanied being alone, that frantic energy of needing to find someone, needing to fix this gap, needing to fill this space, has quieted. In its place is something that, if you are being completely honest with yourself, surprises you. You actually enjoy your own company, not in the defensive way you used to claim it, not as a shield against the loneliness, genuinely. You have discovered rhythms that nourish you. You have built a life that has texture and meaning and pockets of real joy. And while the desire for deep connection has not left, the desperation around it has dissolved. You are no longer searching from emptiness. You are waiting from fullness. And that shift, that single transformation, changes the frequency you broadcast to the universe more than 1,000 affirmations ever could. The third shift: you have stopped performing. In your relationships, in your friendships, in the way you show up in rooms, there is a growing inability in you to pretend. The mask that used to slip on so easily now feels heavy, ill-fitting, almost physically uncomfortable to wear. You cannot pretend to be interested in conversations that bore you. You cannot fake enthusiasm for connections that drain you. You cannot pretend to be fine when you are not, or perform happiness for someone else's comfort. This is not you becoming difficult. This is the false self completing its retirement, and the real self, the one that was being built in the wilderness while the old one was being stripped away, has very little patience for performance. The fourth shift: the urgency has left, and this is the one I need you to pay the most attention to, because it is the shift most people misinterpret. The desire for deep connection is still there. It has never left. It is part of your design, woven into your spirit, the same way the need for water is woven into your cells. That desire is not going anywhere, and it is not supposed to. It is holy. But the urgency, the clawing, time-sensitive, if it does not happen this year, I will not survive urgency, that has lifted. And in its place is a strange calm, a knowing, a sense that what is approaching does not require your panic as fuel. It does not need your anxiety to arrive. It is already in motion. And your job is not to accelerate it, but to remain in the open, available, receiving posture that allows it to find you without interference. The fifth shift: healing has been happening without you trying to make it happen. Old wounds that you have been carrying for years have started to close, not because you forced them through another round of therapy or journaling, though those things helped, but because something deeper is moving through your system. Forgiveness you did not think you were capable of has arrived uninvited. Memories that used to trigger a spiral now produce a quiet understanding. People who once occupied entire wings of your emotional real estate have faded to neutral background. This is not denial. This is not suppression. This is completion. The lessons have been extracted. The karmic curriculum has been absorbed, and the wounds are sealing themselves because there is nothing left to learn from keeping them open. And the sixth shift is the strangest one of all. You have been feeling a pull towards something you cannot name. not a specific person, not a specific place, a pull, a directionless direction, a gravity that operates below the level of thought and pulls you towards certain spaces, certain activities, certain environments, for reasons your logical mind cannot explain. You find yourself drawn to new places without knowing why, saying yes to invitations you would have declined a year ago, picking up interests that feel random but also feel right in a way you cannot justify with logic, as if your energy field is being gently oriented, 1 degree at a time, toward coordinates that are not on any map you can read. I need to ask you something right now, and I need you to answer it honestly, even if the answer surprises you. How many of those shifts did you recognize in yourself? Do not skim past this, actually count. If you counted 4 or more, then what I am about to share with you next is going to hit differently than anything else in this message so far, because those shifts are not random self-improvement. They are not the natural result of time passing or books read or podcasts absorbed. They are symptoms, specific, identifiable, documented symptoms of a very particular process. Your energy field is recalibrating, and it is recalibrating because something, someone, is approaching that requires you to be operating at a frequency you have never operated at before. Let me show you the evidence, and I use that word deliberately. Not hope, not wish, not optimistic interpretation. Evidence. There are energetic indicators that appear when a divine connection is approaching. These are not superstitions. They are patterns that recur across spiritual traditions, across the real lived experiences of people who have walked this path before you, across frameworks that understand the energetic nature of human bonding at a level most surface-level relationship advice never touches. The first indicator is a change in your dreams. Maybe you have been dreaming about someone you have not met. Not a clear face, more like a presence, a warmth beside you in the dream that you cannot identify but somehow recognize. Or maybe your dreams have become more vivid, more symbolic, more clearly trying to communicate something your waking mind is not yet ready to receive. When the spiritual realm is preparing you for an encounter, the dream space is often the first place the preparation shows up. Your subconscious is being seeded with the frequency of the person approaching, so that when you finally meet them in the waking world, something inside you will whisper, "I know you." The second indicator is an increase in synchronicities. Numbers repeating in places you were not looking. Songs that seem to narrate your exact situation, playing at the exact moment you needed to hear them. References to love and partnership and divine connection showing up in the most unexpected contexts, places that have nothing to do with romance, in conversations about completely different topics. These are not coincidences, they are confirmations. Breadcrumbs left by an intelligence that is telling you, keep going, this path leads somewhere. The third indicator is sudden closure on past connections. People you have been carrying resentment toward are suddenly releasing from your system, not because you decided to forgive them, because the forgiveness arrived on its own, like a package you did not order being delivered to your door. The person who hurt you most no longer occupies the room in your mind that they have been renting for years. They have been evicted, quietly, without drama, as if your energy field did a final sweep and cleared out every remaining attachment to connections that have completed their purpose, making room for the only connection that has not yet arrived. The fourth indicator is physical, and this one might feel strange if you have not experienced it, but if you have, you will know exactly what I am describing. Warmth in your chest that arrives for no reason. A tingling at the crown of your head or in your hands that has no medical explanation. A sense of being held, watched over, accompanied by something invisible that you cannot prove but also cannot deny. These are somatic responses. Your body is registering an energetic shift before your mind has the language for it. The nervous system often knows what the intellect does not yet understand. The fifth indicator is a change in how strangers respond to you. People are looking at you differently, approaching you differently, engaging with you in conversations that feel unusually meaningful for interactions with someone you do not know. Someone holds your gaze a beat longer than usual. A stranger offers unexpected kindness. A cashier says something that lands like a message. This is because your external frequency has shifted. When the internal recalibration we talked about reaches a certain point, it begins to affect the way others perceive and interact with your energy. You are broadcasting at a new frequency, and the world is starting to receive it. The sixth indicator is a surge in creativity, ideas arriving uninvited, writing flowing with ease you did not ask for, music moving through you. A sudden pull toward making something with your hands, your voice, your imagination. This is because creativity and receptivity run on the same frequency. When your energy field opens wide enough to receive a sacred connection, it simultaneously opens the channel for creative flow. They are linked. And the creative surge you might be experiencing right now is not a random phase. It is evidence that the receiving channel is open. And the seventh indicator is the one that cannot be taught or manufactured. It is the deep knowing, the persistent, quiet, non-negotiable sense that something is about to happen. Not anxious anticipation, not wishful thinking, not the kind of hope that needs to be propped up with affirmations and effort. A knowing, as settled and sure as the knowledge that the sun will rise tomorrow. You cannot explain it. You cannot defend it with evidence, but it lives in you, and it has not left, and no amount of logical argument has been able to talk it out of your system. That knowing is not delusion, it is recognition. Your spirit knows what is approaching before your eyes can see it. The same way animals sense a storm before the sky changes. The same way a mother feels her child's pain before the phone rings. Something in you is tuned to a frequency that has already picked up the signal. Now, I want to connect all of these indicators to something that ties them together, because they are not random spiritual experiences scattered across your life. They are symptoms of a single, unified process. Your nervous system is recalibrating, and this is where the science meets the sacred. Because what I am about to describe to you is both a spiritual reality and a biological one. When a person has experienced repeated relational trauma, the kind of heartbreak and betrayal and disappointment you have walked through, the nervous system adapts. It goes into a sustained state of heightened alert. The part of your brain that scans for threats becomes hypersensitive. Your attachment system, the neurological wiring that governs how you bond with other people, develops protective patterns. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. These are not just psychological labels. They are physiological realities that live in your body, in the tension you carry in your shoulders, in the way your breathing changes when someone gets too close, in the speed at which your heart rate spikes when a conversation turns emotional. For years, your nervous system has been running a program that was designed for surviving toxic relationships, and it did its job. It kept you safe. It helped you detect danger faster. It helped you leave before the damage got worse. That protective programming served a real and valuable purpose. But here is the thing. A nervous system that is optimized for surviving harmful love cannot receive sacred love. Because sacred love does not announce itself the way harmful love does. Harmful love arrives with fireworks and intensity, and a chemical rush that feels like falling. Sacred love arrives with peace, with stillness, with a quiet warmth that does not set off the alarm system because there is no threat to detect. And if your nervous system is still running the old program, still scanning every emotional interaction for danger, still interpreting closeness as a precursor to pain, then when sacred love shows up, your system will not recognize it. It will feel the peace and mistake it for boredom. It will feel the steadiness and mistake it for a lack of chemistry. It will feel the safety and because safety has never been part of the love story before, it will assume something must be wrong. That is what the recalibration is for. Your nervous system is updating. The hypervigilance is softening. Not because you forced it to lower its guard, but because the system itself is recognizing that the threat season is ending. The old protective patterns that used to run the show, the instant walls, the premature withdrawal, the testing behaviors designed to see if someone will leave before you let them in, those are being replaced with something new. A capacity to stay, to tolerate real closeness, to let someone pass the gate without the alarm going off. This is why you feel both peaceful and restless. The old operating system is powering down. The new one is coming online. And in the space between the two, the internal experience is exactly what happens when any system reboots. A brief window of disorientation, followed by upgraded performance. You are rebooting. And now, I want to give you an image to carry with you, because we have been in heavy territory, and your spirit deserves something beautiful to rest on before we continue. Think of winter, not the picture-perfect version with cozy blankets and snow-dusted windows, the real winter, the kind that kills things. The kind that strips every tree bare and freezes the ground so hard that nothing can push through it. The kind that lasts so long you start to forget what warmth even felt like. That is where you have been, and it was necessary. Winter is not punishment. Winter is the earth saying, some things need to die so other things can be born. Some branches need to fall so new growth has room. Some ground needs to freeze so that when the thaw comes, the nutrients that have been locked beneath the frost are released all at once, creating conditions for the kind of explosive growth that a mild season could never produce. You have been in winter, and winter has done its work. But right now, in this threshold moment, the temperature is changing, not in a dramatic way, not a sudden heat wave, in the subtle way that late winter shifts toward early spring. A slightly warmer morning, a slightly longer evening, a bird outside your window that was not there last week. The ice is cracking, and if you are quiet enough, if you are still enough, you can hear it. Everything I have shown you so far, the internal shifts, the energetic indicators, the nervous system recalibration, the winter that is turning, all of it has been about you. Your changes, your preparation, your readiness. But there is something I have not told you yet, something that turns this from a story about personal growth into a story about convergence. Everything I have just described is not only happening to you, it is happening to someone else, at the same time, in the same season, with the same intensity and the same invisible precision. And when I show you what their journey looks like, you will understand why the timing of all of this had to be so exact, why it could not have been a year earlier or a month later, why this window, this specific stretch of your life, is when everything begins to converge. That is what I am going to take you into next. I told you I would show you what their journey looks like. The person who is moving toward you right now. And this is the part of the message that, when it first came to me, I had to stop and sit with for a long time before I felt ready to share it. Because it is one thing to talk about your preparation. It is one thing to walk through your heartbreaks and your wilderness and the things that were being built inside you during the silent years. That is your story. You have lived it. You know the weight of it. But it is another thing entirely to realize that while you were going through every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every moment of wondering if you were invisible to the universe, someone else was going through theirs. Your soulmate has not been sitting comfortably somewhere, living an easy life, casually waiting for the universe to deliver you to their doorstep. That is not how this works. Sacred connections are not built by preparing one person and leaving the other untouched. They are built by preparing both simultaneously, in parallel, with the same intensity, the same depth, and the same painful precision. While you were having your heart broken by the emotionally unavailable one, they were having their trust shattered by someone who promised everything and delivered nothing. While you were learning to stop shrinking, they were learning to stop hiding. While you were being stripped of the people-pleasing costume, they were being stripped of the emotional armor they built to survive a childhood that taught them vulnerability was dangerous. Different wounds, different specifics, but mirror image demolitions. Where you were taught that you are too much, they were taught that they are not enough. Where you learned to give without receiving, they learned to protect without opening. Where your wilderness stripped away performance, theirs stripped away concealment. The construction happening inside them is the complement of the construction happening inside you, like two halves of a bridge being built from opposite riverbanks, designed to meet precisely in the middle when both sides are ready to bear the weight. And here is the detail that stays with me every time I consider it. They are tired too. They have their own version of the 2 a.m. ceiling stare, their own version of watching everyone around them pair off while they stood alone wondering what was wrong with them, their own version of the night they quietly closed the door on hope and whispered their own 3-word prayer into the dark. And somewhere in their own threshold season right now, maybe at this very moment, something is whispering to them the same thing that has been whispering to you. Stay, do not run, do not settle, do not give up, it is closer than you think. The universe could not bring you together until both of you were ready. This has never been about one person's timeline. It has always been about 2 timelines converging, and convergence requires both lines to reach the same point at the same time. If you had been ready 3 years ago, but they were still in the middle of their clearing, the meeting would have failed. You would have encountered someone still carrying the patterns that trigger your deepest wounds. The connection would have felt intense, because karmic chemistry always does, but it would not have held. Not because the souls were wrong, because the vessels were not yet prepared. And the reverse is equally true. If they had been ready but you were still wearing the costume of your performing self, they would have fallen in love with a mask. And when the mask inevitably fell away, as it always does, the foundation would have crumbled under the weight of reality. Both of you had to arrive at the threshold at the same time. And ready does not mean perfect. It does not mean fully healed, every wound sealed, every pattern resolved. It means far enough along in the process that the remaining 10% of growth can happen inside the relationship rather than before it. There is a point in every preparation where solitary refining reaches its limit, and the final polishing requires the presence of the other person. You are at that point. Both of you are at that point. The 90% has been built in the wilderness. The last 10% requires each other. That is why the timing is converging now. Now I want to teach you something that will change the way you think about the moment this connection becomes physical. Because the word meeting implies encountering a stranger. And what I need you to understand is that when the path finally brings you to the same place at the same time, it will not feel like meeting someone new. It will feel like recognition. There is a concept that shows up across completely different fields with identical meaning. In science, it is called entanglement, the phenomenon where 2 particles that were once connected remain linked no matter how far apart they travel, so that a change in one instantly affects the other. In spiritual traditions, it is called the soul contract, the idea that certain connections were written into the design of both lives before they began, coded to activate when the conditions are right. I am not asking you to adopt either framework as literal truth. I am asking you to consider what they both point to. The possibility that the connection you are waiting for does not need to be built from scratch. It already exists. It has always existed. What has been under construction is not the connection itself, but the capacity of both people to hold it without breaking. This is a critical distinction. You are not waiting for love to be created. You are waiting for the vessels to be prepared. The love is already there. It has been there since before either of you had words for it. And when you finally meet, when the physical encounter finally happens, the recognition will be immediate. Not because you have seen their face in a vision, not because they match some image you have been carrying in your mind, but because your energy field will recognize theirs the way a tuning fork recognizes its matching pitch. Something inside you will vibrate at a frequency it has never vibrated at before, and the vibration will say one thing: this is the one. And this is where something practical enters the picture that I want to share with you. Some people receive this knowing through meditation. They sit in silence and a sense of their person arrives, not a face exactly, but a feeling, a warmth, a direction. Some receive it through dreams, waking with the impression of a presence they cannot name, but recognize at the soul level. Some receive it through prayer, that quiet dialogue with the source, where images and impressions come without being invited. And some people use tools that help bring the invisible into focus. There is something I have come across called a soulmate sketch. The idea is straightforward. A psychic artist working with basic information about you, your name, your date of birth, a few foundational details, connects with what is described as your energy signature. Using the same kind of resonance we just discussed, that entanglement between particles, between souls, they render a portrait, not a photograph, a sketch, a visual impression of the person whose energy frequency is linked with yours. I want to be very honest with you about what this is and what it is not, because your trust matters more to me than anything else in this message, and I would rather lose your attention than lose your integrity. A soulmate sketch is not fortune-telling. It is not a guarantee. It is not going to speed up divine timing or bypass the process we have been walking through together. What it is, at its best, is a mirror. A tool that translates something that already exists at the energetic level into something your physical eyes can perceive. Think of it as a bridge between the invisible and the visible, not a replacement for the spiritual work, a complement to it. Some people find it deeply meaningful. They receive the sketch and something inside them resonates, not necessarily with specific features, but with the energy behind the image. A quiet confirmation. A sense of yes, something is real, something is actually moving. This is not just a story I am telling myself to survive the waiting. And for someone who has been in the dark for a long time, sometimes that confirmation is the difference between holding on and letting go. Others hold it more loosely, with curiosity rather than conviction, and that is equally valid. I will leave the link below for anyone who feels drawn to explore it. There is a full 60-day guarantee if what you receive does not resonate, so there is no risk. But I want to say this clearly. This is not for everyone. Not feeling drawn to it says absolutely nothing about your journey or your readiness. The tools are secondary. The real work, the inner preparation, the clearing, the rebuilding, the trust, that is primary. Whether you use a tool like this or not, what is approaching your life is approaching regardless. For those who feel called, the link is below. For those who do not, carry what you carry. Both paths lead to the same destination. Now, whether you explore that or not, what matters most right now is a distinction that I believe could be the most important thing you learn before the next person walks into your life. I am talking about the difference between a soulmate, a karmic partner, and what some traditions call a twin flame. Because getting clear on this distinction is what separates someone who receives sacred love from someone who mistakes another lesson for the real thing and wonders why it fell apart. A karmic partner is someone who enters your life to teach you something specific. The connection feels intense, often the most intense thing you have ever experienced. There is a magnetic pull, a sense of fate, a certainty in your bones that says this person was sent to you by forces you do not fully understand. And they were, but not to stay. They were sent to deliver a lesson, and once that lesson has been absorbed, once the karmic curriculum is complete, the connection has served its purpose. The classroom closes, the teacher moves on, and what felt like the loss of a destiny was actually the completion of a contract. This is the type of relationship that most chosen ones confuse with soulmate love, because the intensity mimics depth, the chemistry mimics compatibility, the drama mimics passion, and when it ends, the pain mimics the loss of something eternal rather than the graduation from something temporary. If you look back at your history and identify the connections that consumed you most completely, that pulled you in deepest, that hurt the most when they ended, those were almost certainly karmic partners. And you held on to them not because they were meant to stay, but because the intensity of the experience was so overwhelming that it had to be real, it had to be the one. It was not the one, it was a teacher, and the classroom has been dismissed. A twin flame is something different still, and this concept has been so distorted by popular culture that I need to set it straight before we go further. A twin flame is not a romantic ideal, it is a spiritual catalyst. The concept, for traditions that use this language, is that a single soul can express itself through two people, and when those two people encounter each other, the recognition is so intense, so disorienting, so all-consuming that it accelerates spiritual growth faster than anything else in existence. But here is what most content about twin flames will not tell you. Twin flame connections are not always romantic. They are not always comfortable. They are not always designed to end in a shared life. Sometimes a twin flame arrives, tears apart every illusion you have been hiding behind, forces you to confront every shadow you have been running from, and then leaves. Not because they are cruel, because the connection was never about staying. It was about using the intensity of recognition to catalyze a transformation that nothing else could trigger. If this sounds like something you have been through, hold it gently. It does not mean you missed your destiny. It means you completed a spiritual accelerant that was designed to be temporary. And then there is the soulmate. And a soulmate is fundamentally different from both of those experiences. Not less intense, differently intense. Not less meaningful, differently meaningful. The first thing that distinguishes a soulmate connection is peace. Not the absence of conflict, because real relationships produce real disagreements, but the presence of a deep structural safety underneath everything, a sense that you can be fully yourself, not your edited self, not the version you have been grooming for someone else's approval, but your full self, shadows and light, wounds and wisdom, strength and softness, all of it, held without condition. The second thing is mutual choosing, not one person pursuing while the other tolerates being caught. Mutual, voluntary, daily choosing. I choose you, today and tomorrow. And in the boring middle, when the fireworks are gone, and it is just two people deciding, over and over, to keep showing up. The third thing is expansion. You become more of yourself in their presence, not less. Your gifts sharpen, your purpose gets clearer, your capacity for joy deepens. The relationship does not shrink you into a smaller, safer, more manageable version. It amplifies you. The fourth thing is safety to be fully seen. You do not need a mask around this person. You do not have to edit your past or soften your opinions or pretend to be further along in your healing than you are. You can show them the mess and the beauty in the same sentence, and they receive both with the same steady gaze. And the fifth thing is this: the connection is mutual. I cannot overstate this. If you are doing all the reaching, all the initiating, all the emotional labor, all the hoping, while the other person remains passive or indifferent, that is not sacred love. That is another karmic classroom. Sacred love flows in both directions with equal intention, equal effort, equal willingness to show up, especially on the days when showing up is hard. Hold those 5 close, because you are going to need them sooner than you think. And when the next person enters your life, and someone will, these 5 markers will tell you, in the first weeks, not the first years, whether what you are experiencing is another lesson dressed in beautiful packaging, or the actual thing your spirit has been holding space for all along. Now, you know the signs happening inside you. You understand the preparation. You can see the parallel movement. But there is something else happening that connects all of it together. Something external. Something you can observe not just in your emotions, but in the actual circumstances of your life. Doors are opening in areas that have nothing to do with romance. Career shifts, financial movement, new communities appearing, old environments releasing their hold on you. The entire ecosystem of your life is reorganizing, and if you have been wondering why so many things seem to be changing at once, this is the reason. When a divine connection approaches, it does not arrive in isolation. It arrives inside a system-wide upgrade. Everything shifts because the connection requires a different infrastructure than the one your old life was built on. New coordinates, new environments, new contexts. And the reshuffling that has been happening around you, the things you have been calling chaos or transition or instability, that reshuffling is the infrastructure being built. Now you know the signs. You understand the preparation. You can see the movement from both sides. But there is something I need to show you next, because the way you wait in this final stretch matters more than you realize. And what you do with this window, how you carry yourself between knowing and receiving, is what determines whether you step into this connection fully intact or arrive already depleted. That is coming. But before we get there, I need to show you what is actually happening right now in the invisible realm, the mechanics of the approach, the architecture of what divine timing is building in real time. Because when you see the full picture, you will never look at your waiting the same way again. Here is what I believe is happening right now, and I say believe deliberately, not because I doubt it, but because I owe you the honesty of acknowledging that I do not have the full blueprint. No one does. I cannot give you a date. I cannot give you a name. I cannot tell you the address where this meeting will take place. And anyone who claims that kind of certainty is selling something they do not own. But what I can give you is the map, the pattern behind the seemingly random events of your life that, when you see them from above, form a picture so deliberate it cannot be accidental. There are 5 things happening right now, in real time, as part of what I can only describe as the sacred strategy behind your love story. The first is this: your energy field is being recalibrated to attract at a different frequency. We talked about this earlier, the internal shifts, the collapsed tolerance for what does not align, the upgraded standards that are not pickiness but precision. This is not just emotional growth. It is frequency management. The universe is adjusting your broadcast signal so that it is no longer detectable by incompatible connections and becomes unmistakable to the one connection that matters. Think of it like a radio tower switching frequencies. Every station tuned to the old signal gradually loses reception. They hear static, then silence, then nothing. This is why people have been falling away. This is why certain friendships feel different. This is why environments you used to fit into no longer feel like home. Your tower is changing frequencies, and only one receiver is built to pick up the new signal. The second thing happening is this: incompatible connections are being gently removed from your orbit, not through dramatic conflict, through a kind of quiet, natural attrition. People who once sought you out have stopped calling. Social circles that felt like home now feel like waiting rooms. Acquaintances who once filled your calendar have simply drifted away. This is not loss, this is clearing. The energetic space around your life is being simplified, streamlined, made available. Think of it as someone quietly moving furniture out of a room, piece by piece, to create space for something that needs the entire floor. The third thing is more subtle, but if you have been paying attention, you have already noticed it. Your circumstances are being repositioned. Over the past year, maybe longer, something in the logistics of your daily life has shifted in ways that seemed unrelated to anything romantic. A schedule change, a new routine, a different gym, a different coffee shop, a different route to work. a hobby that pulled you into a community you never planned to join, an invitation you accepted that you would normally have declined. These are not random. These are coordinate adjustments. The same intelligence that has been managing your internal preparation is now managing your external positioning, moving you physically, socially, circumstantially into the location where the intersection becomes possible. You do not need to decode every change. You do not need to walk into every room scanning for the one. You just need to stay responsive to the movement. When a door opens that makes no logical sense, walk through it. When a pull draws you somewhere your calendar does not explain, follow it. When something inside you says yes to an opportunity your rational mind wants to dismiss, listen to the yes. The coordinates are being set. Your only job is to remain available to the positioning. The fourth thing is the one we have already explored in depth, but it needs to be named as part of the strategy. Your capacity for real intimacy is expanding every single day that you wait without settling. Every day you choose quality over convenience, depth over speed, truth over comfort. Your capacity to hold sacred love grows a little bit more. The waiting is not dead time. It is active construction of the relational muscles that will sustain the connection once it arrives. And the fifth thing, their preparation is reaching completion. Everything I have described happening in your life is happening in theirs. The clearing, the rebuilding, the frequency adjustment, the coordinate repositioning. Two parallel processes guided by the same intelligence, converging on the same destination at the same speed. And there is a moment, a specific, identifiable moment, when both preparations cross the threshold from not ready to ready enough simultaneously. That moment is not hypothetical. It is approaching with a momentum that, if you could see it from the perspective of the spirit instead of the flesh, would make you catch your breath. Now let me teach you something about how breakthroughs actually work in divine timing, because the idea that delays equal denials has been one of the most damaging lies the waiting season whispers. There are phases, and understanding them will help you locate yourself on the map, not with a specific date, but with a sense of where you are in the sequence. The first phase is the long preparation. This is the phase you have been living in. Months, years, in some cases, as with Joseph, over a decade. This phase is defined by slow, invisible, internal work. Nothing appears to change on the surface. The seed is underground. The caterpillar is in the cocoon. The foundation is being poured in the dark. This phase is the hardest of the three because it offers no external proof that anything is progressing. You have to trust the process without evidence. And that kind of trust, the kind that holds steady when the eyes see nothing, is the most demanding form of faith that exists. The second phase is the acceleration. This is where the invisible starts to become visible. The internal work begins producing external effects. Circumstances rearrange. New people show up without explanation. Old connections dissolve without drama. Synchronicities multiply. Dreams intensify. The knowing deepens. If the first phase is deep winter, the second phase is the thaw, still cold, still bare in places. But the ice is cracking and the first green shoot is visible. And the third phase is the suddenly. This is the one that makes every day of the first two phases worth it. Joseph spent 13 years in phase 1, 13 years of slavery, imprisonment, false accusation, and abandonment. 13 years where not a single thing in his visible circumstances suggested anything was moving. If someone had asked him in year 12 whether the dream from his childhood was still valid, he would have been forgiven for hesitating. 13 years is a long time to hold a promise that has produced no evidence. And then, one morning, one single, ordinary, unremarkable morning that started like every other morning in prison, the cupbearer remembered. The king called, the doors opened. And in the span of hours, not months, not a gradual transition, hours, Joseph went from a forgotten man in a cell to the second most powerful person in the most powerful nation on earth. That is the suddenly. It does not trickle in over weeks. It does not send a save the date 3 months in advance. It arrives the way dawn arrives, present before you see it, visible before you expected it, overwhelming once it breaks. The suddenly always follows the slowly. Always. The longer the preparation, the more significant the arrival. The deeper the winter, the more explosive the spring. The further the seed was buried, the taller the tree. You have done the slowly. You have endured the slowly with a faithfulness that most people will never appreciate or understand, because they have never had to hold a promise this long with this little proof. And the suddenly is approaching. Not next decade, not next year, in this season, in this specific chapter, in this exact stretch of your life where the ice has already been cracking and the temperature has already been turning. Let me tell you about a man who lived through all 3 phases in a way that I think will help ground this for you. He waited 7 years, not casually, intensely. 7 years of praying, wondering, almost giving up, being told by everyone around him that he needed to lower his expectations, that he was too old, that his window had passed. He was 43. And he had, quietly, without telling anyone, written off love as something that happened to other people, something his life was not designed to include. And then, one Saturday afternoon, in a grocery store of all places, not a retreat, not a church, not some curated event designed for meeting someone, a grocery store, he reached for a bag of coffee at the same moment. A woman he had never seen before reached for the same bag. Their hands met on the shelf. He looked up. She looked up. And he told me something I have never forgotten. He said, "It was not like meeting somebody new. It was like remembering someone I had always known, but had somehow forgotten." 7 years. And in one accidental encounter over a bag of coffee, every second of the wait made sense. He did not find her by searching. She did not find him by strategizing. They found each other because the coordinates of their lives had been adjusted, quietly, invisibly, over years, until they intersected on a random Saturday, in a random aisle, at a random hour. The orchestration was invisible. The result was undeniable. I am not prophesying your Saturday afternoon. I need to be clear about that. I am not telling you the exact day, or the specific place, or the precise way it will unfold. I do not have that information. And honestly, I do not think I am supposed to. Because the not knowing is part of the design, the surprise is part of the beauty, the ordinariness is part of the sacredness. What I am showing you is the pattern. And the pattern is remarkably consistent. One day, and it will feel like an ordinary day, because the sacred almost always disguises itself as the mundane. You will be somewhere unremarkable, going about your routine, not performing readiness, not scanning every room for the one, just living, just being the person the wilderness built you into. And someone will be there. Someone who has walked their own road, carried their own ache, survived their own demolition and reconstruction. And when your eyes meet, or your words cross, or your paths touch in some way that logic cannot explain, something inside you will not spike. It will not activate the old alarm system. It will not feel like falling. It will feel like landing. Your nervous system will not fire in the chaotic way it used to fire when intensity was the only language of love you knew. It will settle, the way a ship settles when it finally reaches harbor. Not because the storm was not real, but because the harbor was always the destination. And in that moment, which will last maybe a few seconds on the clock but will stretch across something much larger than time, you will know, not with your mind, with something older, something that has been carrying this frequency since before you drew your first breath. There you are. I have been waiting for you, and I did not even know it until right now. Let me return to the GPS one last time, because this image has been with us since the beginning. and it is time to see it complete. Your life has been recalculating for years. Detour, recalculating, wrong turn, recalculating, road closed without warning, recalculating, construction zone that seemed to last forever, recalculating. But notice something, the GPS never turned off, it never displayed destination unreachable. It never said, I give up, figure it out yourself. Through every wrong turn, every closed road, every frustrating reroute, it kept working, quietly, persistently, without complaint. Recalculating, recalculating, recalculating. And now something has shifted in the navigation. The recalculations are getting shorter. The corrections are getting smaller. The route is becoming clearer. The distance to destination is shrinking with every passing day. You are not lost anymore. You are not circling the same block you have been circling for years. The screen has changed. Destination, sacred connection, status, approaching, estimated arrival, this season. And before this message reaches its end, I am going to speak something over your life, a declaration, an activation that I have been holding in my spirit since the beginning of this message, waiting for the right moment to release it. I believe what I am about to declare over you will stay with you long after you leave this space. I believe it carries the power to shift the energy around your waiting in a way that words alone should not be able to accomplish, but somehow do when they are spoken at the right time, to the right person, in the right season. You are in the right season. This is the right time, and you are absolutely the right person. Stay with me through everything that remains. But first, I need to bring you back to the present for one more critical conversation. Because as extraordinary as the vision we just looked at together is, the way you carry yourself in this final stretch between knowing and arriving determines everything. There are people who receive the right love at the right time and still lose it. Not because the connection was wrong, because they were not equipped for what came after the meeting. And I am not going to let that happen to you. What I am about to share next is the difference between people who receive sacred love and people who receive it and keep it. And that difference is something you can begin building right now, today, before the arrival. Everything I have shared with you up to this point has been about understanding. Understanding where you have been, understanding what was built, understanding what is approaching and why the timing has to be this precise. And that understanding is not small. It reframes your entire love story from randomness to architecture, but understanding alone will not carry you through the final stretch. Because the last miles of any journey, the ones between knowing something is coming and actually holding it in your hands, are where the most important decisions are made. Not dramatic decisions, quiet ones, daily ones. The kind of decisions that do not feel significant in the moment but determine whether you arrive at the destination whole, open and ready, or depleted, guarded, and only half available for what you have spent years waiting for. So I am going to give you tools now, not concepts, not affirmations you pin to a wall and forget. Tools. Things you can begin practicing today in the life you are already living that will keep your energy aligned and your heart positioned to receive without sabotaging what is approaching. The first practice is to tend your own garden. This is the most important thing you can do right now, and it is the thing that people in your position most often neglect. Because when you sense that something is approaching, the temptation is to pause everything else, to put your own life on hold, to stop investing in your projects, your friendships, your creativity, your health, your purpose, as if none of it matters until the other person arrives, as if your real life does not begin until they are standing next to you. This is a trap, and it is a trap for a very specific energetic reason. The energy of a paused life is the energy of stagnation, and stagnation is the opposite of the frequency that draws divine connection. Your soulmate is not being pulled toward your potential. They are being pulled toward your reality, the living, breathing, actively growing, fully engaged version of you that exists right now. So keep building, Keep creating. Keep showing up to the things that make you feel alive, not as a distraction from the waiting, as the waiting done correctly. Because sacred waiting is not the absence of movement. It is movement in a direction that does not depend on another person to be meaningful. When your soulmate finally walks through the gate of your life, let them find a garden that has been flourishing, not an empty lot with a sign that says, waiting for you to give this place a purpose. Let them enter something beautiful that existed before them, and let them know from the first moment that they are joining a life already in progress, not creating one from scratch. The second practice is to release the timeline. I know, this is the hardest one, because your mind wants a date. Your mind has been trained by a world that turns everything into a deadline, a milestone, a countdown. And the absence of a concrete date feels, to the logical mind, like the absence of progress. But divine timing does not negotiate with deadlines. It does not accelerate because you decided you have waited long enough. It moves according to a rhythm that accounts for things you cannot see: the other person's readiness, circumstantial alignment, the completion of processes happening below the level of your awareness. Releasing the timeline does not mean releasing the hope. It means releasing the illusion that you are supposed to be managing this. It means accepting that I do not know when is not the same statement as it will never happen. It means trusting that the same intelligence that engineered 13 years of Joseph's preparation, that guided Ruth's feet to the right field on the right day, that has been building something extraordinary inside you for years, that intelligence has the timing handled. Every minute you spend anxiously counting the days is a minute your energy is broadcasting the frequency of lack, and the universe responds to frequency, not to words. So release the countdown. Release the deadline you set last January. Release the revised one you set last month. Release the new one forming in the back of your mind right now. The timeline is not your assignment. Your assignment is presence, being here, being full, being ready. The rest belongs to the architect. The third practice is to actively cultivate wholeness in your solitude. Wholeness is not a feeling that arrives when conditions are right. It is a practice you choose when conditions are exactly as they are. It is the daily, deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable decision to engage fully with your life as a complete person rather than as half of something waiting to be finished. What does this look like in the small, everyday moments? It looks like preparing a real meal for yourself instead of eating over the sink because it is just you. It looks like taking that trip instead of postponing it until you have someone to share the photos with. It looks like investing in your space, your routines, your daily rhythms as if they matter. Because they do. They are not placeholders, they are your life. And here is why this matters beyond self-care. Wholeness attracts wholeness. If you enter a relationship from emptiness, you bring demand. If you enter it from fullness, you bring overflow. And the relationship that forms around overflow is a completely different organism than the one that forms around demand. One expands over time, the other slowly drains both people until there is nothing left. The person approaching you does not need you to complete them, and you do not need them to complete you. What you need is a partner who meets your fullness with their own. Two whole people choosing to share the overflow. That is sacred love. And practicing wholeness now is what makes it possible. The fourth practice is to stay in community. The chosen one journey often involves deep solitude, and much of that solitude was necessary. We have walked through the reasons in detail. But there is a line between purposeful solitude and isolating withdrawal. And in this final stretch, the temptation to withdraw is strong. The urge to retreat, to protect yourself from the vulnerability of being seen, to avoid the sting of watching other people enjoy the very thing you are still waiting for, to pull back into the safe, familiar territory of I am fine alone, where no one can hurt you and no one can disappoint you. That urge is understandable. But following it right now would be counterproductive for two very specific reasons. First, it shrinks the available coordinates for intersection. Remember, the universe is adjusting your positioning. If you withdraw from community, from social spaces, from the environments where genuine human connection occurs, you are reducing the surface area where the meeting can happen. You are narrowing the field. You are making divine orchestration harder. And second, isolation reinforces a story that is no longer true. The story that says, I am safer alone. That story was useful once. It protected you when protection was what you needed. But it is outdated programming now. And running it in this season is like wearing a winter coat in the first days of spring. The coat served its purpose, but the temperature has changed. And what kept you warm is now preventing you from feeling what is arriving. Stay connected, not in forced, performative ways, in genuine ways, in spaces that fill you rather than drain you, in friendships that are mutual and alive. Because when your soulmate arrives, they are not just entering your heart, they are entering your world, and your world needs to have warmth in it already. And the fifth practice is the most counterintuitive of all. Celebrate other people's love. When you see someone else's relationship, the engagement announcement, the anniversary post, the couple walking together in a way that makes you feel the empty space beside you more sharply than usual, your first response might be a complicated mix. Genuine happiness for them tangled up with a quiet, involuntary ache of, when is it my turn? That ache is valid. It is human. You do not need to shame it or bypass it or pretend it is not there. But what you do with that ache determines something energetically significant. If you let the ache curdle into bitterness, if you allow the comparison to harden into resentment, you create a block that is remarkably effective at repelling the very thing you want. Because bitterness toward other people's love broadcasts a very clear signal. Love is for them, not for me. There is not enough, and the universe mirrors that signal back. But if you can hold the ache and the celebration at the same time, something shifts. You move from the frequency of scarcity to the frequency of abundance. From there is not enough love to go around. To love is so vast that there is plenty for them and for me. And that shift changes the energetic weather around your life in ways that open doors bitterness would have locked shut. Both things can be true at once. I am happy for them, and I trust that mine is coming. Holding both is the practice, and the practice is powerful. Now I need to address something that has been waiting in the background of everything we have walked through together. Something that lives in the deeper layers of your spirit and, if it is left unnamed, has the power to intercept the very love we have been talking about. Not because the love is not approaching, but because something inside you has not yet given itself full permission to receive it. I am talking about the blocks, the internal obstacles that can stand between you and the love that is already in motion. And there are three that I see most commonly in chosen ones who are standing exactly where you are standing right now. The first block is unworthiness, and this one is the most dangerous because it does not announce itself. It does not walk into the room with a sign that says, I am the belief that is going to sabotage your happiness. It hides. It disguises itself as humility, as modesty, as reasonable expectations. It whispers things that sound almost responsible. Things like, I should just be grateful for what I have. Or, maybe I am asking for too much. Or, who am I to expect something extraordinary? But underneath those whispers is a conviction so deep you may not have ever looked directly at it. The conviction that says, I do not deserve love this good. And I need you to understand where that conviction was installed. Because you did not build it. It was built in you. By an experience, a relationship, a family system, a moment in early life where the message was transmitted, not always in words, sometimes just in actions, that your worth was conditional, that you had to earn affection. That love was a transaction, not a gift. Somewhere along the way, someone who should have loved you without conditions put conditions on their love. And your young mind, which did not have the tools to challenge the terms, accepted those conditions as universal truth. I am loved when I perform. Therefore my worth is in my performance. Therefore without performance, I am not enough. That was their limitation, not your truth. Their ceiling, not your measurement. And the belief they installed in you has been running your love life from the shadows ever since, choosing partners who confirm the unworthiness, staying in relationships that validate the "I have to earn this" narrative, leaving before you can be left, because deep down you believe they will eventually discover what you already suspect about yourself. I want you to do something right now, in your mind, without speaking out loud. I want you to trace that belief back to its origin, not to reopen old wounds, but to locate the source so you can finally see it for what it always was. Who was in the room when that belief was first installed? Whose face comes to mind when I say, the first person who made you feel like your love was not enough? See them. And now I want you to understand something with every part of your being. That person's inability to love you freely was a reflection of their capacity, not your value. They gave what they had, and what they had was limited, and you, as a child, measured your own worth by the size of what they could offer, when the truth was that their cup was simply too small to hold what you deserved. You are not what they could give. You are what you are worth, and those are two entirely different numbers. The second block is past identity attachment, and this one is sneakier than the first. You have been in the waiting season for a long time, and during that time, the waiting has become part of who you are. I am the one who is alone. I am the one who has not found love. I am the one still in the middle chapter while everyone else has reached the happy ending. Even when that identity hurts, it is familiar. And familiar has a gravitational pull that can be stronger than hope. The known, even a painful known, feels safer than the unknown. Even when the unknown is beautiful, part of you has become attached to the story of waiting, not because you enjoy the pain, but because you know how to navigate life from this position. You have built routines around solitude. You have developed a quiet pride in your independence. You have constructed an entire identity around being the one who manages alone. And when love arrives, there will be a voice, maybe more than one, that says, "This is not who I am. I am the one who waits, not the one who receives. I do not know how to be someone's partner. I do not have a script for this." That voice is not wisdom. It is the old identity making its last stand. And you need to be ready for it, because it will sound convincing. It will sound like you, and it will try to talk you out of the very thing you have been aching for. When that moment comes, and it will, remember this: you cannot receive a new chapter while your hands are gripping the last page. Let it go. The waiting served you well, but its assignment is complete. And holding on to it past its expiration means holding yourself back from what comes next. The third block is impatience and forcing. And this one is most dangerous right now, because the closer you get to breakthrough, the stronger the temptation becomes. When you can feel that something is near, when the signs are multiplying and the knowing is deepening and the restlessness is building, every part of you wants to do something. Download the app. Say yes to the person who is close enough. Push yourself into situations that exhaust you, just on the chance that the meeting might happen there. Manufacture momentum, because waiting one more day feels unbearable. But forcing is the most effective way to delay what is already in motion, because forced connections do not carry the frequency of divine alignment. They carry the frequency of desperation, and desperation does not attract your soulmate. It attracts another karmic lesson. Do not pull the flower open before its time. The bud knows when to bloom. Your interference does not help it. Your anxiety does not accelerate it. And your impatience, however understandable it is, risks damaging the very thing you have been so carefully prepared to receive. Stay, be still, trust what has been set in motion. The intelligence that brought you through every fire, every heartbreak, every long silent year, that intelligence has not lost your coordinates. It does not need your panic to finish what it started. Now here is the part I told you was coming. The part that separates people who receive sacred love from people who receive it and sustain it for a lifetime. Because here is what nobody tells you about divine love. The miraculous meeting is followed by an ordinary relationship. The fireworks are followed by a Tuesday. The moment of recognition is followed by months and years of choosing each other in the boring, unglamorous, completely uncinematic middle of a shared life. And the skills that got you through the waiting season are not the same skills you need to sustain the connection. Waiting required patience, endurance, trust. The relationship will require something different, something more specific, something you can start building right now, before the arrival, so that when it comes, you are not just ready to open the door, but equipped to keep the house standing. There are 4 capacities you need, and I want to name them clearly so you can begin cultivating them in the life you are living today. The first is vulnerability without collapse. Being open and emotionally honest with another person while remaining structurally intact. Not dumping every wound in the first conversation. Not mistaking emotional flooding for intimacy, but allowing yourself to be seen, layer by layer, at a pace that builds trust without overwhelming the foundation. Vulnerability is strength, but vulnerability without stability is just bleeding on someone and calling it love. The second capacity is conflict without abandonment. Disagreement will happen. It is not a sign that the connection is wrong. It is how 2 different human beings learn each other's language. And your nervous system, trained by years of relationships where conflict meant someone was about to leave, may interpret the first sign of friction as evidence that this one is failing too. It is not failing, it is growing. And the skill is learning to stay in the discomfort of disagreement without reaching for the exit, to let the argument breathe, to trust that 2 people can be angry and still be committed, that a hard conversation is not the end of a love story, but the deepening of one. The third capacity is independence within togetherness. You have spent years building a life that is rich and self-sustaining and entirely yours. That life does not get demolished when love moves in. Your interests, your friendships, your spiritual practice, your solitude, your creative rhythms, all of it gets to stay. Sacred love does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to remain who you are while making room for another person to remain who they are. 2 complete lives, overlapping by choice, not merging by obligation. And the 4th capacity is growing at different speeds without comparison. You and your soulmate will not evolve at the same pace. There will be seasons where you are soaring and they are struggling. Seasons where they are expanding and you feel stuck. And the temptation, especially for someone as empathic as you, will be to either slow down to match them or drag them forward to match you. Neither works. What works is patience. The patience to let each person grow at their own rhythm while staying committed to the same direction. Not the same speed, the same direction. That is what holds a sacred partnership together over decades. Not matching velocities, matching destinations. These 4 capacities, vulnerability without collapse, conflict without abandonment, independence within togetherness, and growth at different speeds, these are what the waiting season was ultimately building. Not just the readiness to attract love, the readiness to maintain it through the hard Tuesdays, through the seasons where feelings dim and commitment remains, through the long, quiet, deeply sacred middle of a life shared with another imperfect person who chose you anyway. I want you to do something right now. In your mind, I want you to choose one of those 4 capacities. whichever one you know is your weakest, the one that made you pause when you heard it, the one your spirit flagged before your mind could explain why. Hold that one. That is your assignment for this season. Not all four at once. One. The one that needs the most attention. And begin building it. In your friendships, in your family relationships, in the small daily interactions where relational muscles are strengthened, not through dramatic acts, but through consistent, quiet practice. And now, chosen one, I want to bring you to the part of this message that I have been holding in my spirit since the very beginning. The part everything else was building toward. Remember, at the very start, I told you that you are not the same person you were when you first heard my voice. That was not a metaphor. Something has shifted. In your understanding, in your energy, in your readiness. You have walked through the past with new eyes. You have seen the present with new clarity. You have looked into the future with grounded hope instead of blind desperation. And now I need to tell you who you have become, because who you are is the reason all of this is happening. Who you are is what your soulmate is being drawn to. And who you are deserves to be named out loud by someone who understands the road you have walked, in a voice that is not your own, tired, questioning, doubting inner narrator. We have walked a long road together, and I need you to know that what I am about to say is not casual. It is not decoration. It is not the motivational section tacked onto the end of a long message to make you feel better before you leave. This is the reason you are guided here today. What I am about to speak over your life is a declaration, an activation. And I need you to receive it not with your analytical mind, not with the part of you that evaluates and questions and keeps a safe distance from things that feel too big. I need you to receive it with the deepest part of your spirit, the part that has been holding space for this, the part that has been waiting, not for information, but for permission to finally believe what it has always known. If you are somewhere you can soften your gaze, do that. If you can take a deep breath and let your body settle, do that. And if you are driving or walking or moving through the world right now, that is fine too. Just let the words land wherever they land. They will find the right place. You are a seer. You perceive what most people miss entirely. You feel the shift in a room before anyone speaks. You read the truth underneath someone's words, the wound behind their defense, the fear behind their anger. This is not a skill you learnt in a classroom. It is something you were born carrying. And it is this capacity, this depth of perception, that explains why surface-level love never worked for you. Your vision is too clear. Your awareness is too deep. You cannot fake satisfaction with something shallow when every fiber of your being was designed to operate at depth. And the person coming toward you needs a seer. Not someone who skims the surface of life and calls it enough. Someone who looks into the hidden places and sees beauty where others see only shadow. Someone who will see them fully, including the parts they have been hiding from the world, and will not turn away. You are a wounded healer. Every heartbreak you survived did not just leave marks on your spirit. It left medicine. The pain you thought was destroying you was building a pharmacy inside you, a storehouse of empathy and understanding and patience that can only be assembled by someone who has lived through what you have lived through. The person approaching you carries wounds of their own, different wounds, different scars, different chapters of loss, and they need a partner who does not panic in the presence of pain, who does not offer hollow advice when the darkness descends, who has sat in their own darkness long enough to know that the only thing that truly helps is not fixing, not solving, just being there, staying, holding the space without needing it to be anything other than what it is. You carry that capacity, not because you chose it, because the wilderness built it into you, one heartbreak at a time. You are a light bearer. You bring warmth into cold rooms without trying. People have been drawn to you your entire life, some to genuinely share the warmth, some, unfortunately, to take it. Your light attracted the energy vampires and the takers, and the ones who mistook your warmth for weakness, not because there was something wrong with your light, but because it was so strong that it was visible from every frequency, good and bad. But the light was never the problem. The lack of a filter was the problem. And now, after everything you have been through, the filter is built. Your light still shines, but it shines with discernment, with boundaries, with the sacred understanding that not everyone who feels your warmth is meant to sit at your fire. Your soulmate is not coming to take your light. They are not another cold person seeking your warmth to fill a void they refuse to address. They carry their own flame, their own brightness, their own heat. And when your light and theirs come together, the combined glow will illuminate things neither of you could see alone. Two fires burning side by side, neither dependent on the other to stay lit. You are a bridge. You have always existed between worlds, between the spiritual and the practical, between the emotional and the logical, between what is visible and what is real. You translate between spaces that most people experience as separate. You hold conversations that move seamlessly between depth and laughter, between sacred and everyday, between the weight of truth and the lightness of joy. Your soulmate comes from a different landscape than yours. Their story was shaped by different forces. Their wisdom was forged in a different furnace. And you, the one who has always connected what others could not, will be the bridge between their world and yours, the place where two different histories merge into one shared future. And you are a hope restorer. You have been restoring hope for other people your entire life. When friends fell apart, you held them together. When family lost their direction, you became the compass. When the people around you ran out of reasons to believe, you became the reason. You have poured hope into others while your own supply ran dangerously low. You have been the well that everyone drinks from while nobody thinks to ask if the well is running dry. And now, chosen one, it is your turn. Not because you finally earned it, not because the universe took a vote and your name came up, because the season of giving without receiving has fulfilled its purpose. The capacity to pour is fully built. And now the source is sending someone whose entire purpose in your life includes pouring back, not occasionally, not when it is convenient, consistently, daily, with the same devotion you have shown to every person you have ever loved. You are not just a chosen one. You are a seer, a wounded healer, a light bearer, a bridge, a hope restorer, and you are the one who was worth the wait. Say that in your spirit right now, not out loud if you cannot, but in the deepest, most private chamber of your being, where declarations become truth. I am the one who was worth the wait. Now we enter sacred ground. What I am about to speak over your life is not casual. I have been carrying it since the first words of this message, and I ask you to receive it with everything you have. Let it settle wherever it needs to settle. Let it reach whatever it needs to reach, and let it do what it was designed to do. We begin with gratitude, source of all things, the hand behind every heartbeat, the architect behind every season. We come to you with hearts that are full of the journey, full of the weight, full of the trust that has carried this chosen one through everything they have endured. We give thanks for the heartbreaks, not because they were gentle, but because they were precise. We give thanks for the loneliness, not because it was wanted, but because it built something that comfort alone could never have created. We give thanks for every closed door, every failed connection, every prayer that seemed to dissolve into the ceiling, but was actually being redirected into a better answer. We give thanks for the wilderness, and we give thanks that the wilderness is ending. Now we move into acknowledgement. You see this one. You see the nights they spent staring at the ceiling, holding questions they were too exhausted to ask out loud. You see the prayers that were whispered into empty rooms at hours when the rest of the world was sleeping. You see the moments where they almost gave up, where the ache was so heavy and the silence was so long that they could not find a single reason to keep believing. And you see the quiet, stubborn, unreasonable resilience that kept them standing anyway. Not because they had proof, not because they had evidence, because something inside them refused to let the flame go out. You have been watching, through all of it, not from a distance, from inside the very fabric of the experience. And this chosen one has been seen, through every tear, through every silent night, through every moment of doubt that almost won, fully, completely, without judgment, with nothing but love. And now we release the belief that love requires the sacrifice of self. Release the story that says you are too much, too deep, too sensitive, too complicated, too intense for anyone to hold without breaking. Release the fear that says the weight means you were forgotten, that while everyone else was being remembered, you were somehow skipped, overlooked, left off the list. Release the comparison. Every measurement of your timeline against someone else's highlight reel. Every time you watched their chapter 5 and judged your chapter 2. Release the unworthiness, the belief that was installed by someone who was too small to love you the way you deserved. Their limitation was never your measurement. Their inability was never your worth. Release the need to control. The when, the where, the how, the who. Release the grip. Release the management. Release the illusion that divine timing needs your supervision to function properly. Release the armor, the wall around the most tender part of your heart that was built by real pain and stayed standing long past its necessity. You do not need it anymore. The danger has passed. Let it fall. Release the karmic patterns, every loop, every cycle, every repetition that played its final lesson and is now complete. The curriculum is done. The classroom is empty. The teacher has left. Release the identity of the one who waits forever. That version of you served its season. It carried you when nothing else could, but its assignment is finished. And holding on to it now means holding the door shut against what is trying to come through. Release it all. Every hidden pocket, every buried layer, every piece of the old story that no longer fits the person you have become. Set it down, not with anger, not with force. With the quiet reverence of someone placing down a heavy coat at the end of a long winter. It served you well, and it is no longer needed. Now we activate the divine connection that has been written into the blueprint of this life since before it began. We activate the meeting, not on our schedule, on the right schedule, not in our way. In the way that will sustain, not just ignite. We activate recognition. When the moment arrives, on that ordinary day, in that unremarkable place, we activate the eyes to see what is standing in front of them. We activate the spirit to know what the mind has not yet processed. We activate the nervous system to settle in peace instead of spike in alarm. We activate the deep, ancient, wordless knowing that says, "This is the one my soul has been calling to in every prayer I thought went unanswered." We activate the soulmate's journey, their courage to show up when everything in them wants to hide, their willingness to be seen when a lifetime of wounds has taught them concealment, their readiness to walk through the door that has been held open for them. We activate their next step, and the one after that, and the one after that. We activate every door that has been held shut by doubt, by unworthiness, by old programming that says good things happen to other people. We speak those doors open, not with force, with truth, with the authority that belongs to a life that has walked through fire and earned the right to stand in the clearing on the other side. Now we speak protection. We cover this rising from the spirit of self-sabotage, the voice that will try to convince this chosen one, when love finally stands in front of them, that it cannot be real, that it is too good. That something must be wrong because it does not hurt the way love used to hurt. We silence that voice, not with anger, with truth. And the truth is, it does not hurt because it is not supposed to hurt. Sacred love does not announce itself with pain, it announces itself with peace. And peace is not suspicious. Peace is the signature. We protect what is being built from premature exposure. Some connections are not destroyed by conflict. They are destroyed by visibility, by being shared too soon, shown too quickly, exposed to opinions that do not understand what they are looking at. We guard this connection in its earliest days. Let it take root in private soil before it is asked to bloom in public light. We cover the space between this moment and the meeting. Every day that remains, every ordinary hour between now and the hour that changes everything. We cover the heart, the energy, the faith, the patience, the hope. Nothing touches what is being held. Nothing diminishes what has been declared. Nothing interferes with what has been set in motion. And now, chosen one, the declaration, I am worthy of sacred, deep, soul-level love, not because I have suffered enough to earn it, because I exist, and existence itself is the qualification. I am not too much. I am not too deep. I am not too sensitive. I am not too intense. I am the exact frequency that my soulmate has been searching for in every wrong connection, in every failed attempt, in every silent night that mirrored my own. I am the one they have been waiting for, the same way they are the one I have been waiting for. And the waiting has not weakened either of us. It has forged us, refined us, made us ready for a connection that shallow ground could never support. I am ready, not perfectly, not with every wound sealed and every question answered, but truly, with hands that know how to hold without gripping, with a heart that has been broken enough to know the difference between what is real and what is performance, with a spirit that has walked through fire and came out not hardened but open, not closed but discerning, not hopeless but grounded. We are chosen ones. We carry light. We carry depth. We carry the kind of love that most people will spend their entire lives never knowing how to give. And we were designed, specifically, intentionally, by a source that does not make mistakes, for connection that matches our frequency, and it is on its way. Not as a wish, not as a possibility, as a convergence that has been in motion since before we drew our first breath, and we receive it, not with desperation, not with grasping, with the quiet, settled, unshakable authority of a soul that knows what belongs to it. I am the one who was worth the wait, and the wait is honored, and the love is in motion, and I receive it, fully, openly, without condition. It is done. What has been spoken is sealed. The waiting is honored. The clearing is complete. The preparation is acknowledged. And the receiving has begun. Not tomorrow, not next month. Now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this exact moment that you will look back on and recognize as the turning point. And so it is. One more thing before you go. I did not plan to say this, but something is pressing on my spirit right now with a weight I cannot ignore. Wherever your soulmate is at this moment, wherever they are sitting or standing or lying awake in their own version of the silence, I believe they felt something just now, something stirred, something shifted. Because that is how entanglement works. When one end of the connection is activated, the other end responds. Not eventually, immediately. It is physics. It is spiritual law. It is the nature of two frequencies that were always linked. You just activated your end. And wherever they are, whatever they are doing, something inside them just moved. They might not understand it. They might call it a random feeling, an unexplainable warmth, a sudden sense that something important just happened that they cannot put words around. But it is real. And it is connected to this moment, to what you just received, to the declaration that was just spoken over both of your lives. Something shifted on both sides right now. You are not who you were when this message began. I need you to sit with that. The person who pressed play, the one carrying the ache, the one who had almost stopped believing, that version of you walked into this message carrying a weight they were not sure they could hold any longer. And now that weight has been named. It has been honored. It has been set down. And what remains is lighter, clearer, more certain. Not because anything outside of you has changed yet, but because everything inside of you just did. Hold on to that. If this message found you at exactly the right time, and I believe with everything in me that it did, I want to invite you to do something. Type the words "I receive" in the comments below. Not for me, for you. Let it be a marker, a spiritual timestamp. The moment you stopped waiting in fear and started waiting in faith. The moment the question marks became periods. The moment you went from hoping it might happen to knowing it already has. In the realm where it counts, it is already done. I receive. And for those of you who want to take one more step toward making the invisible visible, I have left a link below to the Soulmate Sketch I mentioned earlier. It is there for anyone who feels drawn to explore it, anyone who wants something tangible to hold alongside the spiritual shift that just happened in this space. No pressure, no urgency, only for those who feel the pull. The link is below. If someone you know is in their own waiting season right now, if there is a person in your life carrying the same ache we walked through today, someone who is lying awake tonight wondering if love has forgotten their address, send them this message. Do not explain it, do not summarize it, just send it. Let it land the way it landed on you. Because what happened here was not information, it was encounter. And someone in your life needs this encounter as much as you did. Until we meet again, chosen one, stay where you are. Stay exactly as you are. Not because moving is wrong, but because who you are, where you are, how you are, right now, in this very moment, is precisely right. The coordinates are locked, the convergence is in motion, the preparation is complete, and what is approaching you, what has been approaching you for longer than you know, is worth every single second of the wait. You are not forgotten, you are not invisible, you are not the exception to the rule of love, you are the one the rule was written for, and they are coming. Peace, love, and divine alignment. Until next time.